I wanted to talk about two different interfacings. One is called Decovil Heavy and one is called Decovil Light. So for years I taught to quilt shops, quilt guilds around the country, and a major portion of my lecture was talking about different interfacings used for making bags. And so what I would do is I would bring what I would call charm packs of interfacing attached to fabric. Usually I talked about 11 different types of interfacings. I passed around the samples so people could feel what the interfacing felt like when attached to the fabric, and then I also had some bag samples to pass around so people could feel what the finished bag felt like with that interfacing, because sometimes what the single piece of fabric and interfacing feels like is a little bit different than what it will be in the finished bag. So passing around those two different types of samples in person, it was really easy for people once they felt the samples. It was kind of like a light bulb going off in their head. Oh, okay, I understand now what the different options are and why you would choose them. Virtually coming through your computer or device screen, it's a little bit more challenging. I feel like there's a little bit more trust involved because you basically have to just believe what I'm saying about the interfacings and take my word, since you can't actually hold the samples in your hand. But I did want to talk about Decovil Heavy and Decovil Light because a lot of people are curious about what the differences are and how they differ from other Pollen products. So I'm going to have Danny switch over to the overhead camera. I'm going to talk about each of the interfacings, and then I'm going to show samples, kind of just like how I would do in a lecture in person, and hopefully I can get the point across on how they differ. So we're first going to start off with Decovil Light and Decovil Heavy. So I prepared samples of the fabric attached to the interfacing, and then I have just the samples by themselves. Decovil Heavy and Decovil Light are both fusible, and the fusible side of the product is the side that looks shiny when you hold it up to the light. So this shiny side is the side with the adhesive. It feels a little bit slick, but other than that, definitely look for the shiny side to find the adhesive. So this is the sample that I attached to the Decovil Light. I also pulled a piece of cork out of my stash so that I can share the very subtle differences between the two. So the Decovil Light, as you can see, I'm rolling it in my hands, and it rolls pretty smoothly and it doesn't leave any creases or bumps. The fabric looks smooth. I'm going to do the same thing for the cork fabric. So the cork is slightly thicker than, I'm not sure if it'll show up on the camera. The cork is slightly thicker. You can probably see it's a little bit thicker than the interfacing. So it's still flexible, the cork is, but it's not as thin, and this is slightly more fluid than the cork. I know a lot of you have used cork from us in the past, and so that's why I wanted to talk about it in reference to the Decovil Light, so you had some sort of frame of reference. The second sample that I prepared right here is the Decovil Heavy. So this one, it's really not moving. It's pretty stiff and firm, whereas this is a lot more flexible. Again, this has the shiny side with the adhesive. And I also pulled out samples with Peltex products, which I think a lot of you are familiar with. So I prepared a sample with Peltex number 71, which is their fusible product, the single-sided fusible, and Peltex number 70, which is the sew-in. So I attached both of these to fabrics so that you could see the difference. This one is definitely more stiff than the Decovil Heavy, and as you can see, it kind of started, as I bent it, it started to kind of form a crease in the middle, whereas this one really didn't. It was a little bit more flexible than that. And this is this Peltex sew-in. Same thing, once I started to bend it, it sort of started to crease. So I'm going to have Danny, I think, switch back over to the front camera now that we've seen those samples close up. I wanted to pull a few bags that I used each of the different interfacings so that I can explain what portion of the bag that I used it in and what my thoughts are as far as the differences are. So the first one I'm going to pull out, this is actually the original airplane bag. So it's, I think I made this in 2012. The bottom portion of the airplane bag I made using the Peltex sew-in. So it is sort of a firm bottom to the bag. And as far as the thickness goes, the reason I pulled out a few of these bags with the Peltex is so that I could walk you through or talk you through some of the differences or how they felt as far as the finished bag and the stiffness goes. Let me see. This is the triple threat briefcase, and in the front and back portion of the bag, because I wanted it to be not floppy, I wanted it to be sort of a stiff lid, I did actually use the Decovil Heavy in this, and it is it's hard to see on camera, but it is definitely stiff, and it's just the single piece of the Decovil. So I'm going to pull out a few additional bags. Some of them I use Peltex in, and some of them I use the Decovil. So the bottom of this bag, just the bottom panel, not the front part, I wanted it again to be stiff. I used Peltex for the bottom. Again, it does still feel stiff. The bottom does feel thicker though than that lid that I just showed you with the Decovil Heavy. What else was I gonna pull out? Here's an Amethyst Project bag, a similar concept to the triple threat briefcase with the lid. And this one I used 2 pieces of Peltex. This is quite thick, it is stiff, but you can feel that it is quite thick here with the foam interfacing. So my thoughts about the Decovil Heavy, it is more expensive than the Peltex. It is also fusible like the Peltex 71 is. I like that it feels slightly thinner in the finished bag, and I also like when I was showing the samples with the Decovil Heavy, I did like that when I was kind of moving it and folding it, it didn't immediately start creasing down the middle like the Peltex did. The Decovil Light, I wanted to share a couple samples as well. Decovil Light, I have a difference comparison in regards to a Pollen product. So this is a wallet that I made with the Decovil Light in it, and it does still feel quite thin. It has fusible fleece with the Decovil Heavy. This is a clutch from 2012. To get the same effect as the Decovil Heavy, which is thin but still stiff, I used several layers of Pollen Decker Bond. So in order to get the same type of stiffness, I used 4 layers of the Pollen Decker Bond versus 1 layer of the Decovil Heavy. For the Decovil Light, I would suggest this would be really great for fusing to the exterior fabric of pouches or smaller projects that you don't necessarily need the same stiffness that the Decovil Heavy delivers, but you want the pouch to be structured, and maybe you don't want it to have the same loftiness that foam interfacing would deliver. So I wanted to give you a few other bits of information about the Decovil Heavy. So the Decovil Heavy is manufactured in Europe under the manufacturer Visaline. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's also seen under the number Decovil 1, either heavy or light. If you're looking for the European version, it is available as a wider width, I think about 45 inches in width, versus the Pollen Decovil cousins, I guess you could say. So these are available 17 inches wide, so not quite as wide. I have a few bolts of the Pollen in my sewing room. The product numbers, in case you'd like to be very specific when you're searching for items online, the Pollen versions of Decovil Light is model number 525, and Heavy is model number 526. So let me just summarize that. I know that was a lot of information about the Decovil products in regards to the Peltex. Peltex, I do not see any disadvantages in using the Peltex, especially since it is less expensive and generally more readily available depending on where you live. If you can splurge for a smaller piece of the Decovil, whether it's the Pollen version or the European version, I feel like it's great to try it out and just see what you think about it. See if you like it better than Peltex, or if you like the thickness in the finished bags better than Peltex. I certainly, especially if finances are tight, wouldn't suggest necessarily swapping out your Peltex for it, but it is fun and kind of, I just feel like it's kind of a luxury item almost. I'm still using my Peltex, but once in a while I like to splurge and use some of the Decovil heavy in my bags that require either a firm bottom, or I want it to be really structured, like this Renegade bag that I pulled out. So the bottom and I think it was just the bottom. Yeah, the bottom of this bag has I put a piece of Decovil heavy in it. So again, there's no right or wrong answer, but I did want to explain the differences, and I hope the differences in my samples and in the finished bags came across on camera. So I'm going to be answering questions in just a second. So if you have a sewing related question, bag making